The year is 1962. It is a common held belief that the devil could grant particular people supernatural powers used to harm others in exchange for their loyalty. What do you think of when I say the word witch? In Salem, Massachusetts, over 200 people were accused of this crime. 20 of them lost their lives. That's right, I'm talking about the Salem Witch Trials. I've been fascinated by this topic ever since I was a child, and have researched several credible sources to bring you the 411 on what actually transpired. The trials happened for a multitude of reasons that ultimately led to innocent people suffering tragic fates and a stigma around witches that has lasted decades. The catalyst was when Reverend Samuel Parris's daughter, niece, and another young girl started acting out in strange fits. According to the Smithsonian, they screamed, threw things, uttered peculiar sounds, and contorted themselves into strange positions. They accused house slave Tituba and two other local women of bewitching them. Now, it is true that many of the village children spent nights learning the practice of magic, voodoo, fortune-telling, and making witch cakes, which they fed to dogs from Tituba. The other two women pled innocence, as did she, but after Reverend Samuel beat a confession out of her, she stated that the devil had came to her, begging her to serve him. She also said there were several other witches looking to destroy the Puritans. Needless to say, all three women were placed in jail, and the seed of mass paranoia and hysteria was planted. The trials were used as an scapegoat for troubling financial times and an extremely harsh winter. Many people took advantage of this witch hunt by accusing rival neighbors, colonists that they disapproved of, or anyone else they wanted revenge against. However, it was mainly outspoken women climbing the economic ladder or who stood to inherit property that were indicted. So what was it like for these accused witches as they were led to their executions? Well, contrary to popular belief, no one was burned at the stake during this time. The most common form of killing was hangings. Also popular was the swimming test. Accused witches were dragged to the nearest body of water, stripped to their undergarments, bound, and then tied, and then tossed in to see if they would sink or float. Since witches were believed to have refused the sacrament of baptism, it was thought that the water would reject their body and prevent them from submerging. According to this logic, an innocent person would sink like a stone, while a witch would merely bob on the surface. The victim typically had a rope tied around their waist to be pulled out if they sank, but it was not uncommon for accidental drowning deaths to occur. Perhaps the most famous death is that of Giles Corey. He pled not guilty, but refused to be tried by the court, which, in his view, had already determined his guilt. Instead, he was pressed to death. Pressing is a brutal form of torture where the victim is stripped of their clothes, has a board tied to their body, and then slowly heavy rocks are placed on the board. His last words were "more weight." It wasn't until Reverend Hale's wife, Samuel Noyes Hales, one of the most beloved people in Salem, was accused, that people realized that they'd been being lied to. And Judge Samuel Sewell later apologized for sentencing so many people to death, but by then, the damage had already been done. To this day, people still think of witches as ugly hags whose intentions are to harm others. Realistically, though, many followers of Wicca, paganism, and the multiple other forms of witchcraft believe in the ability to manifest a positive change. They affirm in the power of nature and that what you put out comes back to you threefold.